I've got the top 10 early season fantasy basketball MVPs coming up next on Beat the Odds. Don't go anywhere. Hello, sports fans, and welcome back to another episode of Beat the Odds. I'm going to count down the top 10 fantasy basketball MVPs. If you like this content, please smash that like button, and a special thanks to all of our subscribers that have been watching this episode, as you have accounted for 13% of the channel's watch time. If you're part of the 87% of viewers that have not yet subscribed, I encourage you to do so, as it helps me create this content for you every week. Also, leave a comment on a player that you think should have been on this list. The players on this MVP list are the ones that appear most commonly on the top 500 rosters in Yahoo Fantasy Basketball head-to-head leagues this season. This episode is brought to you by Thrive Fantasy Sports. Use the promo code BEATTHEODDS to double your first deposit up to $250. And first-time users get a free square like this Friday if you bet on KD scoring at least 1 point in his game against the Kings, and he does, which I'm sure he will, then you win. Now, this was an interesting list, and I'm going to try to make sense as to why these players are so commonly on the top teams. Let's kick this off with number 10, Nick Claxton, 14.8% roster, 27 minutes per game this season, 12.1 points, 9.2 rebounds, 1.4 assists, 0.1 threes, 0.4 steals, 2.4 blocks, 0.9 turnovers on 65% shooting from the field and 64% from the line. This one does surprise me a bit, as you would have had to have drafted him as early as the 5th round to have secured his services this year. Frankly, I think Jonas Valanciunas might have made more sense, as you could have got him a few rounds later, and he's returning similar value. Nevertheless, if you used your early picks on good shooters, then Claxton is an integral part of your squad, providing a double-double threat with great field goal percentage and top-of-the-line block numbers. Let's go to number 9. We have Tobias Harris, 15.0% rostered, 34 minutes per game over the season, 16.3 points, 6 rebounds, 2.7 assists, 1 3, 0.9 steals, 0.5 blocks, 1.7 turnovers on 52% shooting from the field and 90% from the line. Now, every year, Harris gets criminally undervalued when it comes to the draft, and although he rarely presents eye-popping lines like his teammates Embiid and Maxey, he does enough to hold his own, and he does so on great percentages. It's essential to have trusted 9-cat glue guys on your H2H squad to be competitive in every category, and Harris does just that. He could have been had in round 8, where I'm sure savvy managers would have drafted him. Let's go to number 8. We have Luka Doncic, 15.2% rostered, 37 minutes per game this season, 33.2 points, 8.5 rebounds, 9 assists, 3.9 threes, 1.3 steals, 0.5 blocks, 4 turnovers on 49% shooting from the field and 80% from the line. The first of 2 first-rounders who have made this list. There really isn't a whole lot to be said about Luka that hasn't been said already. That being said, despite the massive lines that he's put up in his career, they have normally come at the expenses of his percentages at the line and his high volume of turnovers. Well, perhaps the reason he makes this list is that he's currently improved his free throw shooting by almost 3.5% over last year, which is huge considering he's at the line 8 times a game. Let's go to number 7. We have Mike Conley, 15.2% rostered, 30 minutes per game, 11.5 points, 2.9 rebounds, 6.2 assists, 2.3 threes, 1 steal, 0.1 blocks, 1.1 turnovers on 46% shooting from the field and 95% from the line. Conley extends the theme of overlooked players that are paying dividends for successful fantasy teams. Like Harris above, Conley is effective at what he does best, and he doesn't hurt you really in any category. In 9-cat leagues, his high assist to turnover vaults his value dramatically. He could have been had in the last rounds of many drafts, and he's currently turned in 7th round value. Conley slots in as a really nice, cheap option for percentages and a good provider of assists. Let's move on to number 6. We have Derek White, 15.6% rostered, 33 minutes per game this season, 16 points, 4.1 rebounds, 5 assists, 2.7 threes, 1.3 steals, 1.1 blocks, 1.7 turnovers on 48% shooting from the field and 88% from the line. This one makes a world of sense to me. White's value was all over the map, especially after Drew Holiday was traded to the team. If you would have drafted him after the point when his stock was falling, then you really hit the jackpot. He's turned in 2nd-round value on a per-game basis ahead of players like Devin Booker, Kyrie Irving, and LaMelo Ball. His unique ability to rack up defensive stats as a guard while shooting lights out from 3 has been truly remarkable. To number 5 we go. We have Bogdan Bogdanovic, 16% rostered, 28 minutes per game this season, 17.5 points, 3.4 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 3.4 threes, 1.5 steals, 0.3 blocks, 1.2 turnovers per game on 47% shooting from the field and 92% from the line. Bogdanovic has turned in a phenomenal start to the season. He went undrafted in many leagues and has proven us all wrong by being a major bench force in 28 minutes per game. Maybe his success in the FIBA World Cup has translated into his quick start this season, but his career highs in 3 points made, free throw percentage, steals, and points have lifted him to 4th round value. Atlanta's lineup has been in flux throughout the season, but it seems as though Bogdanovic's role is very secure. To number 4, we go with Terry Rozier, 17.2% rostered, 36 minutes per game over the season, 23.1 points, 3.4 rebounds, 7.1 assists, 2.6 threes, 1.3 steals, 0.4 blocks, 2.4 turnovers on 47% shooting from the field and 87% from the line. Rozier is on this list more due to the circumstances around his team than the talent that he possesses. Ball went down right around the same time Rozier returned from his injury, which has made him the de facto primary ball handler whenever he has been on the court this year. What is interesting, however, is when you look at both Rozier's and Ball's per game averages, they are neck and neck in terms of Yahoo ranking. And when you consider that you could have picked up Rozier in the 7th round, one can understand why he's on this list. Let's go to number 3. We have Brook Lopez, 17.8% rostered, 31 minutes per game over the season, 13.3 points, 4.8 rebounds, 1.4 assists, 1.7 threes, 0.7 steals, 3.1 blocks, 0.9 turnovers on 49% shooting from the field and 82% from the line. Once all the top flight centers have made it off the board in drafts this year, you were left with a pool that included Brook Lopez. Now, many managers scoffed at taking Lopez in the middle rounds because he's notoriously a poor rebounder, he's quite old, and he doesn't really score enough to make it worthwhile. While many would have considered Jaren Jackson Jr., someone younger and of a similar prototype, and often selected in the 2nd round, as the more desirable of the two, but Lopez has turned in 3rd round value so far this season, where Triple J has struggled to keep within the top 75 players in the league. Let's go to number 2. We have Joel Embiid, 20.2% rostered, 34 minutes per game this season, 34.4 points, 11.8 rebounds, 6 assists, 1.1 threes, 1.1 steals, 1.9 blocks, 3.8 turnovers on 53% shooting from the field and 89% from the line. Most managers would want the number 1 picks to dictate how they want to set up the rest of their team, and if you are lucky enough to grab Embiid in the 1st round, then you set yourself up very nicely. His only weakness is turnovers, but I'm a huge believer in punting that category anyways, because the high turnover players that you would want to draft will contribute heavily in most other categories. What doesn't get discussed nearly enough, though, is that Embiid is lethal at the stripe, hitting nearly 90% of his 11.7 attempts per game. And finally, at number 1, we have Kawhi Leonard, 21% rostered, 34 minutes per game, 24.2 points, 5.8 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 2.4 threes, 1.5 steals, 0.7 blocks, 1.5 turnovers, and 52% shooting from the field and 87% from the line. Is load management still a thing? Many managers were wary of drafting Leonard because he had yet to play more than 60 games in a season for the Clippers. He's well on his way to that this year, suiting up for every game for the team so far. No one could have guessed that to start the season, so those who have gambled on Leonard have been handsomely rewarded with great Kawhi-type production across all categories at elite percentages. And that's going to do it here for this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like on the video and, of course, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. We are going to sign off for now, but we're going to catch you guys on our next episode.